Hello, Alex.
Hi, Abby.
Are you ready for a game about death and dying?
Always.
Okay. I should preface this before we get started. This is a game about death. There's a lot of death talk, a lot of stuff about funerals. I think it's all handled very respectfully, but I realize that might not be for everyone.
Right.
So keep that in mind going into it.
I mean, it is kind of right there in the title.
Right. But I feel like good to say it.
Absolutely. So what's the deal with this?
So this is a pretty short game. It's a very much a story-driven game. So I'm not going to show too much of it.
Okay.
Because I think it's best...
Is this like a start from the beginning situation here?
Yes, this is the beginning of the game. I have played through it already, but this is the beginning. So I am a mortician. This is me. And this is my job. This is my first day at the job, and this is my coworker, Matthew. And he drives the hearses.
He seems like a very cheerful hearse driver.
Yes,
he looks like an old New York cabbie that has gotten into driving dead bodies.
Yes, that is exactly what he is.
All right.
He's fun. I like Matthew a lot. He's great. And this is Rose. So a lot of the storytelling is through these emails.
Okay.
So you get new emails every day, and you can check them. It's usually from like Charlie, Rose, my friend, I believe Jen here, and then usually a funerals monthly thing, which is just, it like has facts about funerals, basically.
Gotcha.
The history of funerals and funerals in different cultures. It's really interesting. I learned a lot from it. So this is like, here's good etiquette about attending a funeral.
Don't be a jerk. That's a good rule in general.
Don't be a jerk. Don't be on your phone. Don't be loud. Don't get drunk. So this is like, it's interesting. I don't know. I learned a lot about different cultures through it. I'm not going to read too much of it because I think that's where the fun of it is.
Right.
But you can see like, here is her friend who works at a pathology museum, which is kind of neat. But she's a lot, she talks about her life. She talks about what she does. And it's very fun and casual.
Cool.
I don't know. Do you think it's worth taking the time to read these?
I if the majority of the storytelling there is in that stuff, I would imagine people would just want to discover that for themselves.
Yes. Yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I think it's very good. I think the writing is good.
Cool.
You can also see there's usually like a tab each time. Oftentimes it's the same thing, but this is where I work. I work for Rose and Daughters, which is like a family-run funeral home. Here's Amelia Rose. I believe her dad started it.
Okay.
But she's an older woman, but she's very nice. I like her. But let's get our task. So,
now to the job of death.
So Matthew dropped somebody off. Mrs. Garcia. She was an elderly woman. So we do usually learn a little bit about why the person died, kind of what happened there. And sometimes that comes into play with how you handle the body.
Okay.
But usually it's sort of like, we're not embalming her, so we're just cleaning her body.
Okay.
Yes.
So how granular does the whole death preparation aspect get?
Not super granular.
Okay.
I'll show you now. So this is the most simplistic. Well, this is probably the most simplistic one we're going to deal with.
It is the first one, so that makes sense.
But they really tell you exactly what you do from A to B. I found while handling the body, see you have like the directions up here. They ask for a closed casket ceremony with no embalming. So we're just going to clean it.
Okay.
So I just have my sponge. I will say sometimes the sound effects are maybe a little too cartoony.
Yeah, this is maybe a little bit flash gamey in terms of the sounds.
But I say all in all, it treats it pretty respectfully. But I do think usually after reading how the people died, taking care of their bodies, and even because it's so simplistic, because it's just like, here is the routine steps of each person. I find it really kind of meditative. I just sort of think about like what happened, and I think it's interesting in that sense.
It does seem like it has a very low-key kind of pace to it, which fits with the vibe.
Yes, totally. So I usually pay respects to the body here, to the person who was in it. And then sometimes, you can just talk to people, kind of overhear what they're saying. It's usually pretty sad. Sometimes it's very mundane and interesting. See, she's talking about pantyhose.
Yeah, it sounds like a kid at a funeral.
Yeah. There was one funeral where a kid was like playing a Game Boy. And I was like, relatable.
Yeah, that probably would have been me at that age at a funeral.
Yeah, totally.
Just kicking my feet around, just bored and not knowing why everyone is so sad all the time.
Yes, totally. I felt like that at funerals and also weddings. I'm like, why is everyone crying?
I was probably more bored at weddings.
Yeah. Well, at least after a wedding, you get like to party a little bit.
I guess. But at that age, you don't really care. You're just like, give me the cake and let me go home.
Yes, fair. Cool. So there's also a bunch of there's some political undercurrent as far as like chemicals and embalming and kind of natural funerals, which I think it's all very interesting. It like opened my eyes to some of this stuff.
Right.
But I do think it can be a little heavy-handed sometimes as well.
You pro burial or pro cremation?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I actually learned in this game there's a thing called water cremation. Well, I think it's something like that. I don't know exactly what it's called. But basically what it is that it's like a bunch of hot, I believe it's like sulfuric water, and it just like speeds up the decomposing process basically. So you get cremated without using all the energy it takes to like fuel a cremation, which is kind of interesting. I don't think I would want to be embalmed because it does seem really bad for the environment, and I don't care about like, I want my corpse to look good.
I'm very much about sort of returning to the earth from whence you came.
Yes,
though
exactly.
Probably not in a 6 feet under burial. I'm just like, just roast my body, make me dust.
I think for me, I would want to like, hey, take all my organs if they're still healthy.
Yes.
Like maybe put me on one of those body farms so they can study my decaying corpse, or like let students cut me open.
Sure.
I think that's what I would want.
I wouldn't mind that. I mean, definitely I'm pro organ donation. I think ultimately I'd rather just be dust scattered to the wind.
Yeah, that's fair. Cool. So here's Jen. She's talking to me. There's a lot of like boy talk of, well, sometimes girl talk too, but just like here's another stuff of like people are being sexist at work because she wears corsets and men are judging her for it and be like, don't you know that's bad for your organs? And she's like, it's not. Here's why. So you get some of the sort of like flavor text in here.
So how much like overarching narrative is there here? Like, is there something that's like, is there an actual climax they're kind of building to?
Yeah, I would say there absolutely is a narrative, especially when it comes to Amy Rose's storyline, which is her boss. And there's sort of a commentary with kind of the funeral business and sort of mom and pop shops and consumerism and that kind of thing, where she is trying to maintain a mom and pop shop when there are bigger corporations around who maybe want to.
Is there such a thing as big death? Like, is there a mainstream big box death industry?
To this game, yes, there is.
Okay.
And you'll see that later, where Amy Rose is very open-minded of like, okay, so this family does not want embalming, so it's going to be a cheaper service or whatever. But that's what they want, so this is what we're going to give them. Whereas later on, you see some other corporations where they're like,
trying to upsell.
You need to upsell. Yeah. You need to give them the full package. They can no longer bring food from home. Like, you need to upsell so we can make money, which, is too bad.
Do you want to subscribe to Death Stop Elite?
Right.
You want to, get your Death Stop Elite points?
You want the like gold casket? Because we got it. Yes. And I would say usually after you have a ceremony and it's the next day, usually she passes along an email from the family who are like, hey, thank you so much for your wonderful job at the funeral, this and that, which I think is also really nice. You kind of get to see like sort of the good side of funerals, not the good side, but like you can appreciate like somebody is taking care of your loved one. They've put time and care into it, and that's important too.
Is there a way to like screw up? Like, can you do a bad job on the funeral and get, okay.
There is the only thing that I've seen where it's like they give you an option of whether or not you want to do it. We might get to it. It might be like, I don't think we will, but there's a point where there is a young man who kills himself, and he in his will, he writes that he wants to be cremated, but the family's like, we want an open casket. Okay. We don't want to do that. And so you can have the choice of like, do you want to do this, or we will give you a different body and you can just handle that ceremony. Okay. But this is an elderly man, nothing fancy, standard funeral with embalming. Okay. And she also reminds you to wear proper embalming gear. It's extremely dangerous.
Yeah, no, don't hang out around formaldehyde if you can avoid it.
No. And you can see me in my gear. Look how cool I look.
I have a feeling that in another life, were I a less squeamish person, I probably would have maybe pursued this kind of line of work.
Really?
Yeah, I'm too squeamish around guts and like body stuff to make that work.
I don't think I'm particularly squeamish. Like, I think I could get used to this potentially pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was really fascinated. I think there was a show called Dr. G Medical Examiner, where she basically, have you seen the show Bones?
Not a lot of it.
Well, it was like a real life version of Bones.
Okay.
Where basically she had bodies. So here I'm breaking rigor mortis, which I think is fascinating. I didn't know that they did this. But basically, she just studies corpses to see how they died and kind of get the clues.
Right.
And I remember being really interested in that as a younger person.
Yeah, I always liked the medical examiner characters on like Law and Order.
Yeah, exactly.
And I watched a decent amount of 6 Feet Under before that show went completely off the rails.
Oh, I don't think I've ever seen that show. The
first couple of seasons of that show I think are pretty cool.
Yeah.
I sort of fell off once like the family melodrama I feel like kind of took over a little more.
Yeah.
Than sort of the individual like sort of death story stuff. I mean, it was always about the characters, but like I don't know, like the early seasons of that show I felt like were something else than what it turned into.
Right. I'm gonna embalm him now. So it's, you know, this is very routine for a lot of the bodies you see in this game, what I'm doing here, which is like you wash it, maybe you shave it, you break rigor mortis, you do the eyes and the mouth to give a little bit of volume and shape to them, and then you embalm it basically.
And you said this game's only like a couple hours long.
It is. It's
right?
I think I finished it in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But you could probably finish it sooner.
So it seems like it's meant to be a fairly simple, contained experience.
Yes, totally. I think I paid $10 for it on Steam, but I think it's about $20, or like 17 or something. But yeah, I don't know. It's good. I think we're kind of blowing through the story a bit just because I want people to experience that on their own.
Right, like the actual email portion of it.
But I think the emails are super interesting, and I think they tell a really captivating story as well.
Yeah, I think maybe for my part, like $10 might be a little more than I'm willing to dive into this for, but like when it's a little cheaper, I might check it out.
Yes, I kind of agree with that. I think $20 for a hour and a half story is a little high, maybe, especially considering how linear and how sort of like you're in it for the experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good experience, but it is maybe for how short this game is.
That's fair.
High. Oh, here's the Game Boy kid.
Yeah.
Young Alex Navarro.
Yep. Fuck off, Dad. I'm playing Tetris.
They talk about this in one of the weekly emails about how some cultures wear white to funerals. I think it was Muslim cultures that do that. It was also interesting because sometimes it's like, well, sometimes it's the religion that dictates kind of what you wear to a funeral.
Yeah.
And other times it's the culture. Like, I think South Korea is much more of like a culturally, this is how they handle stuff just because they don't have a ton of plots for burying people. Let's do one more and then we can call it. Okay.
Standard cremation.
Cool. So this is, yes. And then this is another pass forward from the family. Like, thank you. It's good to see him go off. And sometimes they're more sad than that. Sometimes it's like, it was really hard for me to deal with this. And like, thanks for taking care of it. Or like, I need someone to talk to. Like, can you refer me? Basically. Right.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Yes. So then we just put the tag in, then that's it. It's also interesting, you'll see here, but this is something I learned from this too, which is when you cremate someone, it doesn't necessarily like grind, like you don't just get fine powder at the end.
Oh yeah, no, their bones stick around.
Yeah, I knew that it wasn't like super fine when it was finished, but I didn't realize you actually do like grind the bones. This is also, I think, a little cartoony for what this game is.
Yeah.
The physics maybe not so good.
Yeah, I think the one thing maybe I would say about this game is that like it feels like the parts where you're actually doing stuff, like the actual funeral elements, feel a little browser gamey to me. Like not awful, but just like simplified to such a degree that it almost feels like, I don't know. It just feels like it isn't a lot. Yeah,
I agree with that. I do kind of like the simplicity and the routine of it, given, when you read the emails and you just have time to reflect on them.
Right.
I think there's something very nice about that. especially for some of the ones later on. There are a few sad ones. Like there was a homeless man who I appreciated that one and just how that was handled. I don't want to spoil kind of what happens there, but I don't know.
I do appreciate the kind of meditative quality, as you said.
Yes,
like
totally.
It is a very peaceful, like melancholy, but not like overwrought kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. And there's a lot about sort of like she was talking to her friend in the emails about like dating and finding people who are like comfortable just being like, how was your day when you work in the death industry and stuff like that. So I think that's also very interesting because it's sort of a part of life and death that you don't really think about in like a
most people try not to think about, honestly.
Yes, totally. And which is fair, but it's also like a profession that you kind of forget exists sometimes, I think.
But a deeply necessary one.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, I think this is definitely worth your time. Maybe not quite for $20. But I think it's a very good experience. I know I learned a lot from it, which is pretty cool.
That's cool.
I appreciate a game where I walk away from it being like, oh, I have a new insight into something.
I actually took something away from this other than this was fun.
Yes, exactly. I think it looks very good. I think it's polished and well done aside from some of the cartoony aspects.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good game. I think it's worth your time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.